Welcome to another episode of Disciplinary Literacy with Jackson Rogers. In this episode, I'd like to discuss the characteristics of the learner, such as metacognition, critical thinking, sociocultural backgrounds, motivation, and identity, and the ways that they influence literacy practices and proficiencies in the classroom. So let's talk about metacognition. Metacognitive students are students that are thinking about their thinking. One of the only ways that we can assure that our students will be prepared to do that is to continually assign them reading and writing and make sure that they are writing about what they're reading, because writing in and of itself is a metacognitive task. I like to think of my job as a content teacher to be a coach for metacognition. I think that whether you're in the content of social studies, language arts, science, math, it doesn't matter. You need to be coaching your students on how to think about their thinking. This skill is going to bring them much further than what your constant talking about the subject can. I think what I will probably do in my class is model this for my students. Zygris and Co. in their 9th chapter, we read about how a teacher that models metacognition is setting students up for success in their college life, in their career life. Metacognition is a way to break barriers of illiteracy for children that have a hard time just hearing it from their teacher. They need to be able to understand and digest all of the concepts that they're going through in your class, being at the same time able to work on their proficiency in writing. So metacognition is far and away one of the most important characteristics that a learner can develop. I would love it if by modeling and just outright saying, hey, we're going to be working on metacognition and thinking about our thinking, I'm hoping that we'll help it creep up to about here. And by the time they're about halfway through my class, we're all operating on that metacognitive wave. I know that not all students are going to be there. That's okay. But this characteristic is so crucial to work on with my students. I'm so excited to be a metacognitive coach. Now let's talk about critical thinking. What role does critical thinking as a characteristic of the learner affect the practice and proficiency of literacy? I might be a little biased because I'm a social studies major. Social studies has such a focus on critical thinking and being able to weigh evidence, dig deeply, and go beyond your own understanding. Metacognition has the ability to make one think about their own development and their own process, but critical thinking allows them to think about how authoritative or useful someone else's thinking might be, whether that be the thinking that the teacher is talking about, whether that be the thinking that's displayed in a news article or in a video or in a movie that they watched. Critical thinking is a characteristic that is near and dear to my heart because I'm a history teacher. I am willing to say that it's probably going to be one of my main focuses in every single unit plan that I ever write. So, if it's so important to me, what does it have to do with literacy? The main function of critical thinking is building literacy, is building a knowledge of your subject area, of the things that you're coming in contact with, all of the documents that you have to see in class. As a student, if you're thinking critically, there's no piece that is not being analyzed. If there is a map, then, and you're able to critically think about it, you're building your literacy in geography even if it's not a geography class. If there's a video, not only are you developing your literacy about whatever the video is about, but also about artistic value and the value of visual literacy resources. You have to ask yourself, who was the director in this film? Who was this made by? Critical thinking helps develop a literacy that brings you so much closer, brings one so much closer to being a part of a discourse community. And as I said in my last episode, group membership is one of the key roles of literacy in a young person's life. So using critical thinking or building up that characteristic in young learners is a task that I am definitely going to focus on and am excited about coaching them in. At the end of the day, critical thinking teaches comprehension. So, how does the learner's sociocultural background affect literacy practice and proficiency? A very large chunk of our class, and probably all of our class in some ways, dealt with the sociocultural backgrounds of each student. Students from diverse backgrounds and with diverse linguistic abilities are going to bring challenges as well as benefits to the literacy of a classroom. Some of the challenges of linguistic diversity and sociocultural diversity is the added stress and anxiety of trying to understand a language while also trying to understand content and learn new things, as well as trying to deal with all of the different new sociocultural cues that you're not used to from where you grew up or from what your home life is like. My favorite discussion and reading that we had from the class on sociocultural relationships and the way that it affects a learner was the piece by Ladson-Billings, I Ain't Writin' Nuttin', where a little girl says that she hates writing and she doesn't want to do it and decides that she's not going to. And the teacher asks the little girl, would you like to write a sentence? And when she says, no, I'm not writing anything, I ain't writing nothing, the teacher just says, okay, maybe tomorrow. And Ladson-Billings explains that that teacher has just allowed that student permission to fail. That concept was something I had heard of before, but had never really understood until I read this piece, and it was very formative for me. I think students deserve to grow in their understanding and respect for their culture of origin. This cultural competence that Ladson-Billings talks about is so important for these students that have challenges in the classroom. And it's our job as teachers not to give our students that permission to fail. If we ever want our students to become literate, if we ever want our students to become part of a discourse community, we cannot give them permission to fail. We have to build them up in their cultural competence in a way to where they feel safe learning in our classrooms, where they don't feel belittled for not being able to keep up with the students who are reading at much higher rates. This characteristic of sociocultural backgrounds is so central to literacy. No matter if the student is from the majority sociocultural background or the minority, they come with their own challenges. I, as a teacher, will not allow a student to feel inferior because of their background. And I said that there are benefits to a sociocultural diversity. The different perspectives that come from different cultures, the different way of thinking that different languages have are very, very helpful and effectual to the process of learning and creating a discourse community that is vibrant and dynamic. These students are not just challenges. They are blessings in their own way. Students from a diverse background in a social studies classroom bring the added bonus of today we're talking about this place, and there might be a student that is from there that has perspective, firsthand perspective. It's the job of the teacher to know better than to always call on that kid because they're from there, because that could be taken as a microaggression, and quite frankly, it's not fair to only call on someone because they happen to be from a certain region of the world. My point here is that the characteristic of sociocultural backgrounds is multifaceted, and too many times we only look at it as a challenge and not as this wonderful asset that we have as teachers to build the literacy of those that are in the majority, to see there is a world outside of what they know on both sides. Perspectives are able to be broadened. I'm going to continue my discussion of characteristics of the learner in my next episode. Thank you for watching.